The small boy shuffled into the classroom with his head down, wearing the same faded blue t-shirt he'd worn every day for the past 3 months, now threadbare at the elbows and too small for his growing frame. His classmates had begun to whisper, teachers had started to worry, but 7-year-old Tyler Morgan had learned to ignore the stares and hold back tears when asked why he never wore anything else. If you love stories about ordinary people stepping up to make extraordinary differences in the lives of children who need it most, please subscribe to our channel now so you don't miss any of these powerful reminders of how one person's kindness can change everything. Nobody knew that Tyler's mother had been fighting cancer while working 2 jobs, medical bills consuming every spare penny, leaving nothing for growing children's clothes or school supplies. The family's pride kept them from asking for help, their struggle hidden behind brave smiles and excuses about laundry days, until one observant stranger, a new volunteer at Tyler's after-school program, noticed the worn shirt and the careful way the boy tried to hide the holes. Sarah Morgan eased the apartment door closed, wincing at the slight squeak of hinges she kept meaning to oil. It was nearly midnight, and she didn't want to wake Tyler. Her body ached from the double shift, morning hours at the hospital cafeteria followed by an evening at the convenience store. The familiar pain in her left side throbbed more insistently today, a reminder of the battle her body was fighting beyond mere exhaustion. The apartment was small but meticulously clean. Sarah had always believed that being poor didn't mean living poorly. A single lamp glowed in the corner of the living room, the light barely illuminating the worn furniture that had been carefully arranged to hide the worst of its flaws. School papers with bright red A's were proudly displayed on the refrigerator, held by mismatched magnets collected over years. Sarah placed her purse on the kitchen counter and noticed a carefully washed plate in the drying rack. Tyler had fed himself dinner again. Guilt twisted in her stomach, sharper than the pain in her side. 7-year-olds shouldn't have to be so self-sufficient. She'd left him a sandwich and apple slices before leaving for her second job, but it wasn't the same as sitting down for a proper family meal. She moved quietly down the short hallway to Tyler's bedroom, gently pushing open the door. In the faint light spilling from the hallway, she could see her son's sleeping form. Tyler lay curled on his side, one hand tucked under his cheek. Sarah's heart squeezed at the sight of him, so small, so innocent, bearing burdens no child should have to carry. Her eyes caught something hanging from the shower rod in the connected bathroom, Tyler's blue t-shirt, carefully washed and hung to dry. Beneath it, a small puddle of water had formed on the tile floor. He'd washed it himself again, though she'd told him to leave the laundry for her. Sarah approached the shirt, running her fingers over the thin fabric. It had been Tyler's favorite. When she'd bought it nearly a year ago, part of a back-to-school set of 3 shirts that had fit him perfectly then. Now it was the only one left, and it was at least a size too small. The other 2 had succumbed to tears and stains beyond repair. Months ago, she should have replaced it, should have found a way to buy her growing boy new clothes. But between the medical bills, rent, and keeping food on the table, there simply wasn't anything left. Her insurance covered most of her cancer treatments, but the deductibles, co-pays, and medications quickly consumed what little cushion they once had. And the hours she missed for treatments and recovery meant smaller paychecks just when they needed more, not less. Moving back to Tyler's bedside, Sarah gently brushed the hair from his forehead. He stirred slightly but didn't wake, exhausted from his own day of navigating school while pretending everything was normal at home. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered. "I'm trying." Returning to the kitchen, Sarah settled at the small table and pulled out the stack of bills she'd been avoiding. The bold red past due notices could no longer be ignored. She sorted them by urgency, rent first, electricity second, then the payment plan for her medical bills. At the bottom of the pile was a notice from Tyler's school about an upcoming field trip, $20 for admission and lunch. She set it aside, unsure how she would manage even that small expense. As she worked through the bills, allocating her recent paychecks to cover the essentials, Sarah's vision blurred with exhaustion and emotion. The numbers swam before her, a constant reminder of how precarious their situation had become since her diagnosis 8 months ago. Stage 2 breast cancer had disrupted more than her health. It had shattered their fragile financial stability. She allowed herself exactly 1 minute of tears, shoulders shaking silently before she wiped her eyes and straightened her back. Self-pity. Wouldn't pay the bills or care for Tyler. Sarah had always prided herself on self-reliance. Even when Tyler's father had abandoned them before their son's 2nd birthday, she had managed without asking for help. It was a point of pride that she'd never relied on charity or handouts, but pride wouldn't keep the lights on or put clothes on Tyler's back. The school counselor had called twice, leaving carefully worded messages about resources available for families experiencing temporary hardship. Sarah hadn't returned the calls. The thought of admitting she couldn't provide for her son felt like failing him in the most fundamental way. She finished her budgeting, coming up short as usual, despite moving numbers around like puzzle pieces. Tomorrow she would call about picking up an extra weekend shift at the convenience store. The manager had been understanding about her situation, more flexible with her schedule than the hospital. Before heading to bed, Sarah checked on Tyler once more. This time, she noticed something she'd missed before, her son's small sewing kit open on the nightstand. Closer inspection of the blue t-shirt revealed tiny, careful stitches along a seam that had started to split. Tyler had mended his own shirt, the stitches uneven but determined. The discovery broke something inside her. Sarah sank to the bathroom floor, her back against the cool tub, and finally allowed herself to truly cry. Her shoulders shook with silent sobs as she pressed a washcloth to her mouth to muffle the sound. Her beautiful, brave boy shouldn't be darning his clothes like a character from a Dickens novel. He deserved better than this. For the first time, Sarah considered that her pride might be costing Tyler more than she'd realized. Was preserving her sense of self-sufficiency worth her son feeling ashamed at school? Worth him learning to hide holes in his clothes and wash his single t-shirt in the bathroom sink at night? When the tears finally subsided, Sarah carefully rehung the blue shirt, smoothing a hand over Tyler's amateur repairs. Tomorrow, she decided, she would call the school counselor back, not for herself, but for Tyler. Because loving her son meant doing whatever was necessary to give him what he needed, even if that meant admitting she couldn't do it alone. As she finally crawled into her own bed, exhaustion claiming her almost immediately, Sarah's last thought was a prayer that things would get better, that somehow they would find their way through this dark time. She had to believe that for Tyler's sake. Mrs. Patterson's 3rd grade classroom buzzed with the particular energy of 23 children settling into their morning routine. Sunshine streamed through the windows, illuminating colorful educational posters and student artwork displayed on the walls. At the door, Ella Patterson greeted each student with a warm smile and occasional high five, her practiced eye taking note of details many might miss: a new haircut, shoes on the wrong feet, signs of a restless night. When Tyler Morgan slipped in, eyes downcast and shoulders hunched, Ms. Patterson's smile remained bright, even as concern tightened in her chest. "Good morning, Tyler," she said cheerfully. "I love the drawing you did yesterday. Would you help me hang it up later?" Tyler nodded without meeting her eyes, but she caught the small smile that briefly lifted the corners of his mouth. He made his way to his desk in the 2nd row, carefully placing his worn backpack beneath his chair. As he settled in, Miss Patterson noticed him tug at the hem of his blue t-shirt, trying to stretch it down over his growing torso. The same shirt. Again, Ella. Patterson had been teaching elementary school for 12 years, long enough to recognize the signs of a child in need. Tyler's situation had been concerning her for months now. It wasn't just the repeated appearance of the increasingly threadbare blue shirt. It was the careful way he rationed his school supplies, the way he never complained about being hungry, but always accepted seconds at lunch with poorly concealed relief, the absence of a parent at school functions. The morning proceeded with the familiar rhythm of attendance, morning announcements, and math lessons. Tyler worked diligently, his academic performance remarkably strong despite whatever challenges he faced at home. Mrs. Patterson circulated through the classroom during independent work time, offering encouragement and assistance where needed. As she approached Tyler's desk, she noticed him struggling with a broken pencil, the stub too short to hold comfortably. Without drawing attention, she placed a new pencil beside his worksheet. "This one might work better," she said casually before moving on to the next student. At recess, Ms. Patterson watched from the playground perimeter as the children burned off energy in the October sunshine. Tyler sat alone on a bench, a library, book open on his lap. She was about to approach him when Jason Cooper, a boisterous boy with little filter between his thoughts and words, plopped down beside Tyler. From her position, Mrs. Patterson couldn't hear their conversation, but she saw Jason tug at Tyler's sleeve and say something that made Tyler's face flush red. Tyler said something in response, his expression carefully neutral, despite the obvious embarrassment. When Jason bounded off to join a game of foursquare, Tyler remained on the bench, his small body somehow seeming even smaller. Ms. Patterson made her way over casually. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, sitting when Tyler nodded. "What are you reading today?" "Encyclopedia Brown," Tyler replied, showing her the cover. "I like how he solves mysteries that adults can't figure out." "He's pretty clever," Ms. Patterson agreed. After a moment of companionable silence, she added, "Tyler, did Jason say something that bothered you?" Tyler's shoulders tensed slightly. "It wasn't anything. Sometimes nothing can still hurt our feelings," she said gently. Tyler stared at his book, then finally whispered, "He asked if blue was the only color shirt I own and why it's so small." His fingers unconsciously tugged at the hem again. "I told him it's my favorite, and I don't like other shirts." The practiced excuse broke Mrs. Patterson's heart. "You know," she said carefully, "the school has some extra clothes in the nurse's office, t-shirts and sweatshirts in lots of colors. Sometimes kids need them if they get wet at recess or have an accident." "I don't need anything," Tyler said, quickly, his voice taking on a defensive edge that sounded painfully adult. "My mom says we're doing just fine on our own." Ms. Patterson recognized the pride in his voice, the same pride that had likely prevented his family from seeking assistance. "Of course," she said smoothly, "I just wanted you to know. Everyone needs a little help sometimes." When the bell rang, signaling the end of recess, Tyler closed his book and stood. "Ms. Patterson," he said hesitantly, "please don't tell Jason, or anyone that we... He trailed off, unable to articulate his fears. "Conversations between you and me stay private," she assured him. "That's a promise." Back in the classroom, Mrs. Patterson found herself watching Tyler more closely throughout the afternoon. During art period, she noticed him carefully preserving every inch of the construction paper he'd been given, using even the smallest scraps, rather than taking a new sheet. When a classroom helper distributed cookies for a student's birthday celebration, Tyler wrapped half of his in a napkin and tucked it into his backpack, saving it for later, or perhaps taking it home after the hunt. Students departed for the day. Mrs. Patterson sat at her desk, Tyler's situation weighing heavily on her mind. She'd made several attempts to contact his mother over the past month, leaving voicemails about resources available to families and support programs, trying to be tactful while offering help. So far, Sarah Morgan hadn't responded to any of these overtures. With a determined sigh, Ella Patterson picked up her phone and dialed the extension for the school counselor, Diane Rivera. "Diane, it's Ella," she said when the counselor answered. "I need to talk to you about Tyler Morgan. I'm really concerned, and I think we need to be more proactive." After describing her observations and failed attempts to connect with Tyler's mother, Mrs. Patterson listened as the counselor outlined possible approaches. The after-school program might be our best entry point, Diane suggested. It includes a healthy snack and dinner, and we could offer it as academic enrichment rather than assistance, less threatening to a parent who's reluctant to accept help. Do we have any spots open? Ms. Patterson asked. We just got a new volunteer, which increased our capacity, Diane explained. I'll send you the paperwork. If you can present it to Ms. Morgan as an invitation based on Tyler's academic potential rather than need, she might be more receptive. After hanging up, Ms. Patterson began drafting a carefully worded note to accompany the after-school program application. She emphasized Tyler's intelligence and creativity, framing the program as an opportunity he had earned, rather than charity being offered. She knew it was a delicate line to walk, preserving the dignity of a family in need while ensuring a child received necessary support. As she placed the note and application in Tyler's folder for tomorrow, Ms. Patterson hoped she was doing the right thing. In her 12 years of teaching, she had learned that sometimes the children who needed help the most came from families most resistant to accepting it. For Tyler's sake, she hoped his mother would make an exception to whatever had been holding her back. Michael Chen adjusted the sleeves of his cashmere sweater as he walked through the elementary school's double doors. The contrast between the polished corridors of his Manhattan design studio and these linoleum hallways couldn't have been more stark, but something about the school's unpretentious warmth felt more like home than his expensive loft apartment ever had. Mr. Chen, a woman with cropped silver hair and practical clothes, approached with an outstretched hand. I'm Diane Rivera, the school counselor. Thank you so much for volunteering with our after-school program. Please, call me Michael, he replied, shaking her hand. And thank you for having me. I've been looking for a meaningful way to give back. As they walked toward the multi-purpose room, Diane explained the program structure. We have about 20 children, grades 1 through 5. Many come from single-parent households or families where both parents work multiple jobs. The program provides homework help, enrichment activities, and, importantly, a nutritious meal before they go home. Michael nodded. What will I be doing specifically? We try to match volunteers with activities that leverage their strengths, Diane explained. Given your background in design, we thought you might lead some art projects. Many of our students have limited access to creative outlets at home. The multi-purpose room buzzed with activity when they entered. Children of various ages worked at different stations, some doing homework, others reading, a small group playing educational board games. Michael scanned the room, taking in the scene with a designer's eye for detail and a heart that remembered all too well what it was like to be a child with limited resources. Let me introduce you to the group, Diane said, leading him to the center of the room. After a brief introduction that highlighted Michael's career as a clothing designer, Diane directed him to a table set up with art supplies. We thought you could start with a simple project today, just to get to know the children. Michael surveyed the materials: construction paper, markers, glue sticks, and scissors. Nothing fancy, but more than enough for creative expression. As students began drifting toward his table, he quickly devised a project. Today we're going to design our dream day, he explained once a group had gathered. What would you do if you could do anything at all? What would you wear? Where would you go? Draw it, and then we'll share our adventures. The children enthusiastically dove into the project, chattering about trips to Disney World and superhero costumes. Michael circulated among them, offering encouragement and asking questions about their designs. About 15 minutes into the activity, he noticed a small boy sitting slightly apart from the others, working intently but silently on his paper. Michael approached casually, noting the boy's faded blue t-shirt and careful handling of the markers, recapping each one immediately after use. Mind if I see what you're working on? He asked. The boy glanced up briefly before returning his attention to his drawing. It's not very exciting, he said softly. Michael pulled up a chair beside him. I'm Michael. What's your name? Tyler, the boy replied, still focused on his work. Well, Tyler, sometimes the quietest dreams are the most meaningful, Michael said. May I look? Tyler hesitated, then turned his paper slightly toward Michael. Unlike the fantastical scenes his classmates were creating, Tyler had drawn a simple picture of two people in what appeared to be a park. One figure, clearly a woman, was standing rather than sitting in a wheelchair, partially visible in the corner of the page. That's my mom, Tyler explained, pointing to the standing figure. In my dream day, she's not sick anymore and can walk in the park without getting tired, and we have a picnic. He pointed to a carefully drawn blanket with tiny food items. Michael felt something catch in his throat. That's a beautiful dream day, Tyler, he said gently. Is your mom sick? Tyler's hand stilled over his drawing. She has cancer, he said matter-of-factly, though his voice held a tremor. But she's going to get better. She promised. Michael nodded, unsure what to say next. His own mother had made similar promises during her illness, though she hadn't been able to keep them. Before he could respond, Tyler continued. In my dream day, we also go shopping, he added, pointing to small rectangles that Michael now realized were meant to be stores. Mom says when she gets better and catches up on the important bills, we can get new clothes, Michael's designers. I caught the frayed collar of Tyler's shirt, the way it stretched too tightly across his shoulders. He recognized the signs of a garment washed too many times, worn well beyond its intended lifespan. It reminded him vividly of his own childhood, when he'd worn the same 3 shirts in rotation, careful to alternate them so his classmates might not notice. Clothes can be important, Michael agreed carefully. They help us express who we are. Tyler looked up at him with unexpected intensity. Do you really design clothes? Like for a job? Michael smiled. I do. I have my own company that makes clothes for adults and children. How did you learn to do that? Tyler asked, curiosity overtaking his initial shyness. Reaching into his messenger bag, Michael pulled out his leather-bound sketchbook. It started with drawings, just like what you're doing now, he explained, opening the book to show Tyler a series of clothing sketches. I was always drawing as a kid, clothes especially. We didn't have much money when I was growing up, so I would imagine all the things I wished I could wear. Tyler's eyes widened as he looked at Michael's detailed sketches. You were poor too? The directness of the question startled a laugh from Michael. Yes, he admitted. My mom raised me by herself in a small apartment in Queens. Sometimes there wasn't enough money for new clothes or extra things. But now you're rich? Tyler asked, his concept of wealth clearly black and white. Michael considered how to answer. I have enough now, he said finally. More importantly, I get to do something I love that helps people feel good about themselves. As the other children began finishing their projects, Michael reluctantly stood to check on them. May I come back and see more of your drawing later? He asked Tyler. Tyler nodded, then hesitated. Could you maybe show me how to draw clothes sometime? I'd like that very much, Michael replied. Throughout the remainder of the session, Michael found his attention repeatedly drawn to Tyler. The boy was noticeably quieter than his peers, yet there was a self-possession about him that spoke of maturity beyond his years. When snack time came, Michael observed Tyler carefully, wrapping half his apple and granola bar in a napkin and tucking them into his backpack, a behavior Michael recognized from his own childhood, saving food for later, perhaps for when there wasn't enough. As the session wound down, Michael noticed Tyler slip away to the restroom. On impulse, he followed, pausing outside the door when he heard the sound of running water. Peering in, he saw Tyler at the sink, carefully dabbing at a small stain on his blue t-shirt, his face set in concentration as he tried to remove the mark. Something in Michael's chest tightened at the sight. He stepped back before Tyler could notice him, memories of his own childhood washing over him, the careful preservation of limited resources, the pride that demanded self-sufficiency, even at a young age, the determination to appear normal, despite circumstances that were anything but. In that moment, Michael Chen made a decision. Somehow he was going to help this boy, not with the obvious charity that would wound his pride, but in a way that preserved dignity while meeting real needs. As Tyler exited the restroom, Michael was waiting in the hallway, sketchbook in hand. "I thought maybe we could start those drawing lessons now, if you have a few minutes before you need to leave," he offered casually. Tyler's tentative smile was all the answer he needed. After the after-school program ended, Michael remained behind, helping Diane Rivera organize art supplies while gathering his thoughts. His encounter with Tyler had stirred something deep within him, memories he'd long suppressed of his own. "Childhood struggles. Diane," he began carefully, "may I ask about one of the students?" Tyler, the quiet boy in the blue shirt. Diane's expression shifted subtly. "Tyler Morgan. What would you like to know?" "I noticed some signs that he might be going through a difficult time," Michael said, choosing his words deliberately. "The way he saved part of his snack, how carefully he treats supplies. And his drawing was about his mother getting better from cancer." Diane nodded, seemingly weighing how much to share with a new volunteer. "Tyler's situation is challenging," she acknowledged. "His mother is a single parent battling breast cancer while working 2 jobs. Miss Patterson, Tyler's teacher, has been concerned for some time, but the family has been reluctant to accept assistance." "Has the school offered help?" Michael asked. "Multiple times," Diane confirmed. "We have programs for clothing, school supplies, even holiday assistance, but Ms. Morgan has politely declined everything. She's very proud," she sighed. "The only reason Tyler is in the after-school program is because we framed it as an academic opportunity rather than support." Michael understood that pride all too well. His own mother had been the same way, working herself to exhaustion rather than accepting what she viewed as handouts. Even when neighbors offered hand-me-down clothes, she had insisted on paying with home-cooked meals or mending services. "What about Tyler's father?" Michael asked. "Not in the picture, from what we heard." "Understand," Diane replied. "Ms. Morgan rarely discusses personal matters." Michael nodded thoughtfully. "Would it be inappropriate if I took a special interest in Tyler? Perhaps mentoring him specifically about design and drawing?" Diane studied him for a moment. "Your interest seems genuine, but I should caution you about boundaries. We need to be careful not to single children out in ways that might embarrass them or create unhealthy dependencies." "Of course," Michael agreed quickly. "I'm not suggesting anything that would draw attention or make him uncomfortable. Just some extra encouragement in an area where he's shown interest." "That would be fine," Diane said. "In fact, having a positive male role model could be very beneficial for Tyler." She hesitated, then added, "Just be mindful that his situation may mean he can't participate in activities that require materials from home or parent involvement." After thanking Diane for her insights, Michael left the school with Tyler weighing heavily on his mind. Instead of heading directly home, he found himself driving toward the address Diane had mentioned in passing, a convenience store where Sarah Morgan worked evenings. The store was typical of its kind, fluorescent lighting, aisles of packaged foods, a counter of hot food items kept warm under heat lamps. Michael entered casually, pretending to browse while discreetly observing the woman at the register. Sarah Morgan was thin, with the same serious eyes as her son. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and despite the obvious exhaustion in her face, she greeted each customer with a genuine smile. Michael noticed how she moved carefully, as if conserving energy or perhaps managing pain. He selected a few items he didn't need and approached the counter. Up close, he could see the faint shadows beneath Sarah's eyes, the slight paleness that suggested ongoing medical treatment. "Find everything okay?" she asked with professional cheerfulness. "Yes, thank you," Michael replied, studying her name tag to confirm his suspicions. Sarah, it read, just as Diane had mentioned. As she rang up his purchases, Michael noticed a small photo tucked beside the register. Tyler, in what appeared to be a school portrait from the previous year, smiling shyly at the camera. The sight confirmed what he'd already suspected. Despite their challenging circumstances, this was a family bound by love and determination. Michael paid for his items and left, sitting in his car for several minutes while contemplating his next steps. Directly offering charity would clearly be rebuffed. Whatever help he provided would need to preserve dignity and avoid any hint of pity. The following day, Michael arranged to meet with Ms. Patterson during her planning period. The teacher welcomed him into her classroom, curiosity evident in her expression. "Thank you for making time," Michael began. "I wanted to discuss Tyler Morgan. I met him yesterday at the after-school program and, well, his situation reminds me a lot of my own childhood." Ms. Patterson's professional reserve softened slightly. "In what way?" Michael briefly shared his background. Growing up with a single mother who struggled financially, the careful preservation of limited resources, the pride that made accepting help difficult. "I'd like to help Tyler and his mother," he concluded, "but in a way that respects their dignity. Based on what Diane told me, direct assistance would likely be rejected." Ms. Patterson nodded thoughtfully. "Sarah Morgan is incredibly resilient and proud. When I've suggested resources in the past, she's insisted they're managing fine." She sighed. "But Tyler wearing the same shirt every day tells a different story." "That blue t-shirt," Michael agreed. "I noticed it immediately. The fabric is practically threadbare at the elbows. He's worn it every day for at least 3 months," Mrs. Patterson confirmed. "I suspect it's the only one he has that still fits, but he makes excuses about it being his favorite." Michael felt a pang of recognition. He'd done the same thing as a child, claiming preference for the same worn clothes to hide their lack of alternatives. "Would the school allow an initiative that could help Tyler indirectly?" Michael asked. "Something that wouldn't single him out, but would meet his needs." "What did you have in mind?" Ms. Patterson asked. "I'm not entirely sure yet," Michael admitted, "but I think it needs to be something that involves all the students, provides resources as part of participation, and celebrates creativity rather than focusing on need." Ms. Patterson considered this. "The principal is very supportive of enrichment programs, especially those that don't impact the school budget. If you have a specific proposal, I'd be happy to help present it." Michael promised to develop a concrete plan and thanked Mrs. Patterson for her insights. As he prepared to leave, she called after him. "Mr. Chen, may I ask why this matters so much to you? We have many students in difficult circumstances." Michael paused at the door. "When I was Tyler's age, someone saw me, really saw me, beyond my circumstances. A high school art teacher who volunteered at my community center recognized something in me worth nurturing. He gave me my first sketchbook and taught me that creativity could be an escape and eventually a path forward." He smiled slightly. "I guess I'm looking for a way to pass that forward." Back in his car, Michael made several phone calls to industries, contacts, fabric suppliers, production managers, fellow designers. Each call built upon the last, laying groundwork for the plan forming in his mind. By the time he arrived at his design studio, he had secured tentative commitments for donations of materials and support services. That evening, Michael sat at his drafting table, sketching concepts not for his upcoming collection, but for a program that might help one small boy in a blue t-shirt, and perhaps others like him, without wounding the fierce pride that Michael understood all too well. The after-school program quickly became the highlight of Tyler's week. Twice weekly, he would make his way to the multipurpose room with an anticipation that brightened his normally serious expression. Michael had been volunteering for 3 weeks now, and though he worked with all the children, he and Tyler had developed a special connection centered around their shared interest in design. Today, Michael had brought professional colored pencils and heavyweight drawing paper, tools that made Tyler's eyes widen with appreciation when they were placed before him. "These are just like the ones real designers use?" Tyler asked, running his fingers carefully over the pencils arranged by color. "Exactly the same," Michael confirmed. "I use these in my studio every day." Tyler selected a blue pencil, the same shade as his ever-present t-shirt, and began working on the design Michael had suggested, reimagining an everyday object to make it better. While the other children tackled backpacks with built-in video games or shoes that could fly, Tyler focused intently on creating a water bottle with special features for his mother. "See, it has a place to hold pills," he explained, pointing to a small compartment in his drawing. "And the handle is easier to grip when your hands hurt. Mom says sometimes her fingers don't work right because of the medicine." Michael nodded, genuinely impressed by the thoughtfulness of the design. "You've really considered the user's needs," he said, using professional terminology that made Tyler sit up straighter. "That's what good designers do. They think about how people will actually use the things they create." As the other children drifted to different activities, Michael and Tyler remained at the art table, their heads bent together over drawings and designs. Michael had begun teaching Tyler basic principles of clothing construction, showing him how to sketch simple garments. "Why did you decide to make clothes?" Tyler asked as he practiced drawing the t-shirt shape Michael had demonstrated. "Instead of like buildings or cars or something?" Michael considered the question. "I think because clothes are so personal," he answered. "What we wear affects how we feel about ourselves and how we move through the world. I like the idea of creating something that could help people feel confident and comfortable." Tyler nodded. "Seriously? Like how when you have a hole in your shirt, you keep your arm down so no one sees it?" The simple observation revealed more than Tyler probably intended. Michael kept his expression neutral despite the pang he felt. "Exactly," he agreed. "Clothes can either make us feel secure or self-conscious." Tyler bent over his drawing again, adding careful details to his t-shirt design. "I try not to care about my clothes," he said quietly, not looking up. "Mom says it's what's inside that matters, not what you wear." "Your mom sounds very wise," Michael replied carefully. "And she's right, that who you are is much more important than what you wear. But it's also okay to want clothes that fit well and make you feel good." Tyler's pencil stilled. "Some kids at school talk about my shirt," he admitted, voice barely audible. "Because I wear it every day. Jason said it smells, but it doesn't. I wash it every night." Michael felt a surge of protectiveness. "You know," he said, keeping his tone conversational, "when I was about your age, I had just 3 shirts that I rotated. I washed them in the bathroom sink every night, just like you do." Tyler's head snapped up, eyes wide with surprise. "You did?" Michael nodded. "My mom worked really hard, but there wasn't always money for new clothes when I outgrew the old ones. I used to tell everyone that I just really liked those 3 shirts and didn't want to wear anything else." "That's what I say too," Tyler whispered, a mix of relief and wonder crossing his face at finding someone who understood. "But really, sometimes we make the best of what we have," Michael finished for him. "And there's nothing wrong with that. It shows resourcefulness and responsibility." Tyler considered this, then asked hesitantly, "Did the other kids make fun of you?" "Sometimes," Michael admitted. "But I learned something important from that experience. Want to know what it was?" Tyler nodded eagerly. "I learned that how we respond to challenges often determines where we end up in life. I could have been angry or ashamed, but instead, I became interested in how clothes are made. I started sketching designs for things I wished I could wear. And eventually that interest became my career." As their session came to an end, Michael helped Tyler gather his drawings into a folder. "May I keep this one?" Michael asked, pointing to Tyler's water bottle design. "I have a friend who works with medical products who might find it interesting." Tyler's face lit up with pride. "Really? You think it's that good?" "I think it shows remarkable insight," Michael confirmed. "The mark of a true designer is considering problems others haven't noticed." As the children prepared to leave, Michael noticed Tyler carefully returning each colored pencil to its exact place in the case, handling the expensive tools with reverence. "Tyler," Michael said on impulse, "how would you feel about taking these pencils home? I have plenty at my studio, and it seems a shame for you to only use them twice a week." Tyler's expression cycled rapidly through longing, excitement, and then reluctance. "I couldn't," he said finally. "They must cost a lot." "They're just tool," Michael said with deliberate casualness. "Like how a carpenter needs a hammer or a chef needs knives. If you're going to practice design, you need the right tools." Still, Tyler hesitated. "My mom doesn't like us taking things from people. She says we're not charity cases." Michael recognized the pride in those words, the same pride his own mother had instilled in him. "This isn't charity," he explained. "Think of it as an investment. Teachers provide tools to promising students all the time. When you become a famous designer, you can pay it forward by helping another young artist." Put that way, Tyler found the offer acceptable. He carefully placed the pencil case in his backpack with a reverence that made Michael's chest tighten. "Thank you," Tyler said solemnly. "I'll take really good care of them." "I know you will," Michael replied. As Tyler left with the other children, Michael remained behind, thoughtfully organizing supplies. The boy's situation echoed his own childhood with uncanny similarity, right down to washing clothes in the bathroom sink and making excuses about wearing the same things repeatedly. But there was one crucial difference. Michael's mother had eventually accepted help from a community program that provided winter coats and school supplies. That assistance, reluctantly received but desperately needed, had eased their burden during the most difficult period. From what Michael had learned, Sarah Morgan had yet to reach that point of acceptance. Michael understood the complexity of pride when it was all you had left. He also understood that sometimes, for a child's sake, that pride needed to bend before it broke. The colored pencils were a small first step, a way to give Tyler something he needed while preserving dignity. But the blue t-shirt remained a visible reminder that more substantial help was required. Michael's developing program would take time to implement, and winter was approaching. The threadbare cotton that barely sufficed now would provide little protection against November chill. As Michael packed up his own supplies, he resolved to accelerate his plans. Tyler's quiet dignity deserved recognition, but his growing body deserved proper clothes too. The challenge would be finding a way to provide what was needed without triggering the pride that kept the Morgans isolated in their struggle. Principal Margaret Jenkins had seen many proposals cross her desk during her 15 years at Elmwood Elementary, but the one Michael Chen was currently presenting stood out for both its creativity and comprehensive approach. "Let me make sure." "I understand," she said, reviewing the glossy presentation folder. "You want to launch a design competition for our students, with the winners having their designs produced as actual garments?" "Exactly," Michael confirmed. "Children are naturally creative, and this program would channel that creativity while teaching practical skills like problem-solving and presentation." Seated beside Michael, Ms. Patterson added her support. The educational benefits align perfectly with our arts curriculum. Students would learn about design processes, material properties, and even business concepts like marketing. Principal Jenkins flipped through the proposal's pages. "And your company would fund this entirely?" "My company and several industry partners," Michael explained. "Fabric suppliers, production facilities, and other designers have all committed resources. There would be no cost to the school or families." The principal looked up, her experienced eyes studying Michael thoughtfully. "This is remarkably generous, Mr. Chen. May I ask what prompted your interest in our school specifically?" Michael had anticipated this question. "My own design career began with a school art program and a teacher who recognized potential in me. I'd like to create similar opportunities for children who might not otherwise be exposed to design as a creative outlet or potential career path." It wasn't the complete truth, but it wasn't a lie either. Michael's interest had begun with Tyler, but had expanded as he recognized similar needs among other students in the after-school program. "The most interesting aspect," he continued, "is The educational component we're calling Design Process Immersion. Each participating student would receive a kit of materials for hands-on learning, fabric samples, basic tools, and most importantly, several basic garments to study construction techniques. Basic garments? The principal questioned. T-shirts, sweatshirts, simple items that demonstrate different techniques, Michael clarified. Students would keep these items after the program ends, as they'll have used them as study pieces. Ms. Patterson's eyes met Michael's briefly. She understood exactly what he was doing. The study garments would provide essential clothing to children like Tyler, while preserving their dignity. No one would know which children needed the clothes and which simply enjoyed receiving them as part of the program. Principal Jenkins considered the proposal for another moment before nodding decisively. I think this could be valuable for our students, especially those with limited access to enrichment activities. When would you want to begin? As soon as possible, Michael replied. My team has already prepared the curriculum materials and started assembling the student kits. The principal raised her eyebrows at his preparedness, but didn't comment on it. Very well, Ms. Patterson. Would you be willing to serve as the faculty liaison for this program? Absolutely, the teacher agreed readily. After finalizing details and signing the necessary approval forms, Michael left the principal's office with Mrs. Patterson. That was quite masterful, she said quietly as they walked down the hallway, providing clothes without it feeling like charity. I remember what it was like, Michael responded simply. Pride is sometimes all you have. Taking that away does more harm than good. How soon can you really begin? Ms. Patterson asked. I've noticed Tyler's shirt is becoming more threadbare each week, and with November here, the first kits will be ready by next week, Michael assured her. I've had my team working around the clock. Later that afternoon, Michael visited the after-school program to share news of the design initiative with the children. He explained the competition in terms that highlighted the creative opportunity while downplaying the valuable materials each participant would receive. Each of you will get a designer's kit with everything you need, he told the excited group, and the most creative designs will actually be made into real clothes that you can wear. The children's enthusiasm was immediate and infectious. Even typically reserved, Tyler seemed captivated by the prospect. Will we get to design anything we want? He asked Michael after the announcement. Within certain parameters, Michael explained, we'll focus on specific categories like t-shirts, jackets, or accessories. But within those categories, your imagination is the only limit. Tyler considered this thoughtfully. Could we design clothes for people who are sick, like special shirts that would be easier to wear when you go to the doctor? Michael felt a wave of admiration for the boy whose first thought was for others despite his own needs. That's exactly the kind of thinking that makes a great designer, he said, identifying a real need and creating a solution. We could definitely include adaptive clothing as a category. As Tyler sketched preliminary ideas, Michael observed the other children's excitement with satisfaction. What had begun as a plan to help one boy had evolved into something that could benefit many students. The educational value was genuine, but so was the practical assistance built into the program structure. When the session ended, Michael remained behind to help Diane organize materials. The children seem very excited about your design program, she remarked. I hope it lives up to their expectations, Michael replied. Can I ask you something? Diane said, lowering her voice. This program, it's partly about Tyler, isn't it? Finding a way to get him new clothes without it being obvious charity. Michael hesitated, then nodded. Initially, yes, but as I developed the concept, I realized many students could benefit, both educationally and practically. Diane smiled. I thought so. It's a brilliant approach, actually. Much more dignified than our usual methods of assistance, which often single out children in ways that can be embarrassing despite our best intentions. Dignity matters, Michael said simply. Indeed it does, Diane agreed. You know, I've noticed something interesting since you started volunteering. Tyler seems more confident. He participates more, makes eye contact, even smiles occasionally. Having someone who understands his situation without pitying him has made a difference. Michael had noticed the changes too, subtle but significant. Shifts in Tyler's demeanor during their sessions together. The boy still wore the same blue t-shirt, still carried himself with careful reserve, but there was a new light in his eyes when he worked on designs. A sense of possibility that hadn't been there before. The program officially launches next week, Michael told Diane. The materials kits should be ready by Thursday. Just in time, Diane noted. The weather forecast is predicting our first real cold snap this weekend. Michael nodded, thinking of Tyler's thin t-shirt. The timing wasn't coincidental. He'd been pushing his production team to complete the kits as quickly as possible, aware of the approaching winter weather. As he drove home that evening, Michael reflected on how his initial impulse to help one child had evolved into a comprehensive program that preserved dignity while meeting practical needs. His mother would have approved of this approach, he thought. Education and opportunity rather than handouts, respect rather than pity. Still, he wondered how Sarah Morgan would respond when Tyler brought home the design kit with its included clothing. Would she see through the strategy to the assistants beneath? And if she did, would her pride allow her son to participate? Despite his careful planning, Michael realized there remained variables beyond his control. For now, though, the program was moving forward. Within a week, Tyler would have new clothes, practical, well-made garments that would replace the threadbare blue t-shirt without requiring his mother to accept direct charity. It wasn't a complete solution to the Morgan family's challenges, but it was a start. Sarah Morgan sat on the edge of the bathtub, her body trembling with exhaustion. The nausea that followed her treatments had been particularly severe today, leaving her drained and hollow. She'd called in sick to the convenience store, something she rarely allowed herself to do. Each missed shift meant less money, but tonight she simply couldn't stand upright long enough to work. Leaning against the cool tile wall, Sarah closed her eyes. Dr. Reynolds had been concerned about her blood work at today's appointment. "Your counts are lower than I'd like to see," he'd said, his kind face serious. "We may need to adjust your treatment plan, perhaps reduce your work hours to allow more recovery time." The suggestion had sent a spike of panic through her. Reduced hours meant reduced income, something they absolutely couldn't afford. The rent was already 2 weeks late, and winter utility bills would soon increase with heating costs. "Mom?" Tyler's voice came through the bathroom door. "Are you okay?" Sarah straightened, pushing away from the wall with effort. "I'm fine, honey," she called back, trying to inject strength into her voice. "Just washing up after the doctor." "I'll be out in a minute." She splashed cold water on her face and practiced a smile in the mirror until it looked convincing enough. Only then did she open the door to find Tyler waiting, his small face pinched with worry. "I made dinner," he announced, taking her hand carefully as if she might break. "Grilled cheese sandwiches. They're not burned this time." Sarah felt her practiced smile soften into something genuine. "That sounds perfect. Thank you, Tyler." He led her to the kitchen table where he'd set 2 places with their mismatched dishes. The sandwiches were slightly lopsided but golden brown, cut diagonally the way she always prepared them for him. Beside each plate sat a small serving of baby carrots, the last from their refrigerator, she noted. "You did a wonderful job," she told him as they sat down together. Tyler watched her take a bite, only starting his own sandwich after she'd begun eating. "Is your medicine making you sick again?" he asked directly. Sarah hesitated, balancing honesty against protection. "A little," she admitted. "But that often means it's working hard to make me better." Tyler nodded, accepting this explanation, with the same stoicism he applied to all their challenges. "Ms. Patterson says we're starting a special design program at school tomorrow," he said, changing the subject, "the one Mr. Michael told us about. We get designer kits with real materials." "That sounds interesting," Sarah replied, grateful for the shift in conversation. Tyler had mentioned this new volunteer several times, always with unusual enthusiasm. Anyone who could bring that spark to her son's eyes during this difficult time had earned her gratitude. Mr. Michael says I have real talent, Tyler continued, his voice animated in a way Sarah hadn't heard in months. He showed me how to draw clothes like professional designers do. I'm going to design a special shirt for when people are sick, with places for medicine tubes. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. Even with their struggles, her son was thinking of ways to help others. That's a wonderful idea, Tyler. Very thoughtful. As they finished dinner, Sarah noticed Tyler's eyelids growing heavy despite his efforts to remain alert. The role reversal wasn't lost on her, her 7-year-old son trying to care for her, fighting his own exhaustion to ensure she ate properly. "Why don't you get ready for bed?" she suggested gently. "I'll clean up here." "I can help," Tyler protested, though a yawn undermined his offer. "You already made dinner," Sarah reminded him. "That was a big help. Now it's my turn." After Tyler had brushed his teeth and changed into pajamas, Sarah tucked him into bed, despite his insistence that he was too big for such rituals. As she smoothed his hair back from his forehead, she noticed new worry lines that no child his age should carry. "Mom?" Tyler asked sleepily. "Are we going to be okay?" The simple question held layers of meaning that broke Sarah's heart. "Of course we are," she assured him with more confidence than she felt. "We're a team, you and me. We'll always be okay." Tyler's eyes drifted closed, his breathing evening out almost immediately. Sarah watched him sleep for several minutes, love and concern battling within her. He was taking on too much responsibility, growing up too quickly in the shadow of her illness. Yet their circumstances left few alternatives. Returning to the kitchen, Sarah cleaned up the dinner dishes before sitting down with the pile of bills she'd been avoiding. The numbers refused to cooperate no matter how she rearranged them. With her missed shift tonight and another treatment scheduled next week, the financial gap was widening beyond her ability to bridge it. For the first time, Sarah seriously considered the school counselor's repeated offers of assistance. Her pride had always stopped her before, the fierce independence that defined her identity as a mother and provider. Accepting help felt like admitting failure, like confirming she couldn't properly care for her own child. But Tyler's tired eyes and too small shirt told a different story. Perhaps true failure lay in allowing pride to deprive her son of necessities. The thought settled uncomfortably in her mind as she finally went to bed, her body aching for rest while her mind continued churning with worry. Morning came too quickly. Sarah forced herself up through layers of fatigue, determined to maintain their routine, despite her exhaustion. She found Tyler already dressed in his blue t-shirt, carefully packing his backpack at the kitchen table. "You're up early," she observed, filling the kettle for tea. "I have to finish something for the design program," he explained, showing her a sketch he'd been working on. "Mr. Michael said our first assignment is to create something that solves a problem." Sarah looked at the drawing, a surprisingly sophisticated design for a shirt with special openings for medical ports and IV lines. The level of detail impressed her, as did the careful labeling and Tyler's neat handwriting. "This is excellent, Tyler," she said sincerely. "Very professional," Tyler beamed at the praise, carefully placing the drawing in a folder made from construction paper. "Mr. Michael says, design is about making life better for people. I thought about how your shirts never work right with your port." Sarah's throat tightened again. How many 7-year-olds designed clothing based on their mother's chemotherapy experiences? They completed their morning routine, Sarah pushing through, her fatigue to walk Tyler to his bus stop, despite his protests that he could go alone. As they waited, she noticed him yawn repeatedly, his small shoulders drooping with exhaustion. "Did you have trouble sleeping?" she asked, concerned. Tyler shook his head. "I woke up early to finish my drawing and—" He hesitated, then continued in a smaller voice. "I washed my shirt too, but it's still a little damp." Sarah felt the sleeve of his t-shirt, finding it indeed slightly damp in places. The realization that her son had risen early to wash his clothes By hand, knowing she was too ill to manage laundry, pierced her heart. As the bus approached, Sarah made a decision. Pride had its place, but it shouldn't come at the expense of her son's well-being. Today, she would call the school counselor and discuss what assistance might be available, not for herself, but for Tyler. "I love you," she told him, hugging him tightly before he boarded the bus. "You know that, right? More than anything in the world." "I know, Mom," Tyler replied with the simple confidence of a child who has never doubted his mother's love. "We're a team." Watching the bus pull away, Sarah felt both resolution and apprehension. Accepting help would be one of the hardest things she'd ever done, harder even than the treatments that ravaged her body while promising eventual healing. But for Tyler, she would find the strength to bend her pride before it broke them both. Sarah Morgan stared at the papers spread across the kitchen table, her brow furrowed in concentration. Among her usual bills and medical forms was something unexpected, a glossy brochure describing the Young Designers Program at Tyler's school, accompanied by a permission form and program outline. She had found it while emptying Tyler's backpack for washing, tucked carefully between homework assignments. According to the materials, the program was an educational initiative sponsored by a professional design company, providing students with hands-on experience in clothing design and production. What caught Sarah's attention was the list of materials each participant would receive, including study garments that students would keep after analyzing their construction. A suspicion formed in Sarah's mind, connected to Tyler's unusual behavior. The previous evening, he had emerged from his bedroom wearing a new green t-shirt she'd never seen before, casually explaining it was part of the design program when she'd questioned him. Sarah had been too exhausted from her treatment to pursue the matter further, simply grateful to see him in something other than the threadbare blue shirt. This morning, he'd worn another new shirt, navy blue with subtle stitching details. Again, attributing it to the program requirements. "We have to wear them to understand how they're constructed," he'd explained with a seriousness that had made her smile despite her exhaustion. Now, reading the program details, Sarah understood what was happening. This wasn't just an educational initiative, it was carefully disguised assistance. Someone had created an elaborate program that provided clothing to children while preserving their dignity, framing necessity as opportunity. The designer's name caught her eye, Michael Chen, founder of Chen Design Group. Tyler had mentioned this, Michael, repeatedly, the volunteer from his after-school program who had been teaching him about design. Sarah recalled her son's growing enthusiasm over recent weeks, his excited chatter about drawing techniques and clothing construction. Initially, she felt a flicker of the familiar pride that had kept her from accepting help for so long. Was this charity cleverly repackaged? But as she reviewed the materials more carefully, she recognized the genuine educational value embedded in the program. Children were learning real skills, developing creativity, and gaining exposure to potential career paths. The clothing was just one component of a comprehensive educational experience. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the apartment door. Sarah wasn't expecting visitors, and solicitors rarely made it past the building's security entrance. Puzzled, she rose to answer. A slender man in his mid-30s stood in the hallway dressed in simple but clearly expensive clothes. He carried a portfolio case and wore a visitor's badge from Tyler's school. "Ms. Morgan?" he asked. "I'm Michael Chen from the Young Designers Program at Elmwood Elementary. I hope I'm not interrupting anything, but I wanted to speak with you about Tyler's project." Sarah's suspicion crystallized into certainty. This was the architect of the program she'd just been examining, the person who had found a way to clothe her son without wounding their pride. "So please come in," she said, stepping aside. "I was just looking at the program materials." Michael entered, taking in the small but meticulously maintained apartment with a quick glance. "Thank you for seeing me without notice. I should have called first, but I was at the school for a session and thought I might catch you before your evening shift. How did he know about her work schedule, Sarah wondered, gesturing for him to sit at the kitchen table. The program materials still lay spread out beside her bills, which she quickly gathered into a stack. Tyler has shown remarkable talent in our sessions, Michael began, removing design sketches from his portfolio. Particularly this concept for adaptive medical clothing. It shows extraordinary insight for someone his age. Sarah looked at her son's drawing, the specialized shirt designed for patients with medical ports. Her throat tightened at the realization that Tyler had created this with her in mind. He's very thoughtful, she managed. Michael nodded. Beyond thoughtful. He has genuine design instinct, understanding user needs and translating them into practical solutions. That's rare, even among professional designers. Sarah studied the man across from her, trying to decipher his motivations. Mr. Chen, may I ask you something directly? Of course. This program, it's not just about design education, is it? She asked quietly. The clothes the children receive, that's part of the purpose. Michael met her gaze steadily. The educational component is genuine, he said. But yes, providing quality clothing to students is an intentional aspect of the program. Instead of the defensive pride she expected to feel, Sarah experienced surprising relief at his honesty. Why? She asked simply. Michael was quiet for a moment, considering his response. When I was Tyler's age, my mother worked 2 jobs to support us after my father left. There was rarely enough money for new clothes, so I wore the same few items until they fell apart. He gestured to the apartment around them. I lived in a place much like this with a mother much like you, proud, hardworking, determined to provide without assistance. Sarah felt her defenses lowering as he continued. A teacher recognized my situation and found a way to help that preserved our dignity. She started an art program that required supplies she provided, including a winter coat disguised as a smock. His smile held understanding rather than pity. That coat made it possible for me to walk to school through New York winters without freezing. More importantly, it taught me that accepting help doesn't diminish your worth. Sarah looked down at her hands, noting their increasing thinness. It's not easy, she admitted, asking for help or even accepting it when offered. I know, Michael said simply. My mother was the same way. She called it standing on our own 2 feet. It wasn't, until years later, that I realized sometimes standing alone isn't the strongest choice. Sarah felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Tyler told me about the program, about the clothes being part of the learning materials. He was so excited about the design aspects that the clothes seemed secondary. That was the intention, Michael confirmed. Real education with practical benefits. No one but Tyler knows which part matters more to your family situation. Something in his tone, respectful understanding without judgment, finally broke through the wall Sarah had maintained for so long. I called the school counselor yesterday, she said quietly, after my doctor recommended reducing my work hours. I've been resistant to assistance programs, but Tyler needs stability, especially now. Michael nodded. That takes courage, more courage than refusing help sometimes. What happens next with Tyler's design? Sarah asked, deliberately changing the subject before emotion overwhelmed her. Michael recognized and respected the shift. With your permission, we'd like to develop his concept into an actual prototype. Several hospitals have expressed interest in adaptive clothing designs, particularly for pediatric patients. Hospitals are interested in my son's design, Sarah asked, genuine surprise breaking through her composure. Very interested, Michael confirmed. His solution addresses problems that many commercial medical garments overlook. With some refinement, it could actually go into production. For the first time in months, Sarah felt something beyond exhaustion and worry, a spark of pride, not in her self-sufficiency, but in her son's creative potential. Tyler had taken their difficult circumstances and transformed them into inspiration for something positive. I would be honored to have his design developed, she said, reaching for the permission form among the program materials. Excitement buzzed through Mrs. Patterson's classroom as Michael distributed the design kits to eager third graders. Each student received a professional-looking canvas tote bag emblazoned with Young Designers Program in bold letters. Inside, carefully packed materials awaited discovery: sketch pads, drawing tools, fabric swatches, and most importantly, several basic garments for study purposes. Remember, Michael told the class as they explored their kits, these are tools for learning about design. The clothes included are your study pieces, but they're also yours to keep after the program. Designers need to understand how garments are constructed. Tyler sat at his desk, eyes wide with wonder, as he carefully unpacked his kit. Unlike his classmates who dumped contents enthusiastically across their desks, he removed each item methodically, examining it before setting it aside with reverent precision. When he reached the clothing, his hands stilled momentarily. Neatly folded inside were 3 t-shirts in different colors, a hooded sweatshirt, a lightweight jacket, and 2 pairs of pants, all exactly his size. Tyler glanced up, meeting Michael's gaze across the classroom. Something passed between them, understanding, gratitude, respect, before Tyler carefully returned the clothes to the bag. Ms. Patterson moved through the room, helping students organize their materials while casting occasional glances at Tyler. She'd witnessed his reaction to the clothes, the careful control that masked what must have been overwhelming emotion for a 7-year-old who had worn the same shirt for months. Now, Michael continued, once everyone had explored their kits, today we'll start with the design challenge I mentioned. You'll be creating something that solves a real problem for real people. Who remembers what designers call this process? Human-centered design. Several voices called out. Tyler's among them. Exactly, Michael confirmed. Designing with the actual users in mind, not just what looks cool. As the children settled into work, Michael circulated through the classroom, offering guidance and encouragement. He paused longest at Tyler's desk, where the boy was already deeply focused on refining his medical-friendly shirt design. May I? Michael asked, gesturing to the sketch. Tyler nodded, sliding his drawing forward. Michael studied the surprisingly sophisticated concept, a t-shirt with cleverly disguised openings for medical ports and IV access, designed to maintain dignity for patients while providing practical functionality. This is remarkable, Tyler, Michael said quietly. You've identified a real need and created a thoughtful solution. Have you considered adding a feature here? He pointed to the shoulder seam, perhaps a hidden magnetic closure to make dressing easier when someone isn't feeling well. Tyler's face lit up at the suggestion. That would help Mom a lot, he said, then hesitated, suddenly self-conscious about the personal revelation. The best designs come from personal experience, Michael assured him. It gives you insights others might miss. As Tyler incorporated the suggestion, Jason Cooper leaned over from the next desk. Jason, the same boy who had commented on Tyler's repeated outfit weeks earlier, examined Tyler's drawing with unexpected interest. That's actually pretty cool, Jason admitted. Is it for your mom? My aunt had cancer last year and she always complained about hospital gowns. Tyler tensed initially at the personal question, but something in Jason's tone, genuine curiosity without mockery, made him respond. Yeah, the regular shirts don't work well with her port. She has to wear really big ones that don't fit right. My aunt wore my uncle's shirts, Jason offered. She said they made her feel like a kid playing dress-up. The simple exchange marked a subtle shift in the classroom dynamic. As other students became aware of Tyler's design and the reasoning behind it, his project transformed from merely another assignment to something meaningful that connected to real life. Children who had previously whispered about his repeated outfit now asked questions about his design, offering suggestions and sharing stories of relatives who had faced similar challenges. Miss Patterson observed this transformation with quiet satisfaction. Michael's program had accomplished something beyond providing Tyler with needed clothes. It had given him a platform to translate his difficult personal experience into something positive that earned his peers' respect. By the end of the session, Tyler's design had evolved with input from classmates and Michael's guidance. What had begun as a simple adapted t-shirt now included several thoughtful features: magnetic closures at strategic points, soft fabric linings around potential irritation areas, and even a small, accessible pocket for storing medication schedules. "Would it be okay if I made this for real?" Tyler asked Michael as they were packing up. "Not just as a drawing, but an actual shirt for my mom?" "That's exactly what this program is about," Michael replied. "Turning ideas into reality. I think we could definitely make that happen." As the students filed out for lunch, Michael noticed Tyler carefully place his tote bag in his cubby, positioning it so the clothing remained hidden inside. Despite the excitement of the program, the boy's pride remained intact. He had accepted the design kit as an educational tool, not as charity, and wasn't about to advertise the new clothes it contained. During lunch, Ms. Patterson joined Michael in her classroom where he was reviewing the students' initial designs. "I saw what happened with Tyler and Jason," she said. "That little moment of connection was significant. Jason's been one of the students who noticed and commented on Tyler wearing the same clothes." Michael nodded. Kids can be surprisingly empathetic when they understand the why behind situations. Tyler's design gave context to his circumstances in a way that highlighted his creativity rather than his limitations. "Diane Rivera called me this morning," Ms. Patterson mentioned, changing the subject slightly. "Sarah Morgan, Tyler's mother, contacted her about assistance programs. Apparently, she's finally ready to accept some help." Surprise and relief crossed Michael's face. "That's a significant step. Did Diane mention what changed her mind?" "She didn't go into details, but it sounds like Sarah's health has taken a downturn. She mentioned missing work shifts and needing to reduce hours." Michael absorbed this information with concern. "The timing of the design program is fortunate then. At least Tyler will have proper clothes regardless of what's happening at home." "Speaking of which," Ms. Patterson said, "I noticed Tyler being very careful with the clothing from his kit. Most of the other children were excited to show off their new designer items, but he kept everything packed away." "Pride," Michael said simply. "It's a powerful force. He'll probably find a way to introduce the new clothes gradually, maybe claiming they're part of the required program materials," which they technically are, Ms. Patterson pointed out, with a smile. "Exactly. That's the beauty of this approach. Everything is framed as educational rather than charitable. The children who need the clothes most are often the ones most careful to preserve their dignity." As lunch period ended and students began returning to the classroom, Michael gathered his materials to leave. Before going, he paused at Tyler's cubby, noticing how carefully the boy had arranged his tote bag to conceal its contents while prominently displaying the Young Designers Program logo, emphasizing participation in a special opportunity than receipt of needed items. The subtle distinction spoke volumes about Tyler's character and the complex emotions he navigated daily. Michael recognized in these small choices the same pride and dignity his own mother had maintained throughout their difficult years. The determination to focus on capabilities rather than limitations, to find ways to participate in normal activities. Despite abnormal circumstances, as he left the school, Michael found himself more committed than ever to ensuring the program's success, not just for Tyler, but for all the children whose needs might be hidden behind carefully maintained facades of normalcy. Elmwood Elementary's multi-purpose room had been transformed. Display boards showcasing student designs lined the walls. Professional lighting highlighted each project, and a small runway had been constructed at the front for the fashion show portion of the event. Parents, teachers, and students milled about excitedly, examining the creative work produced during the Young Designers Program. Michael stood near the entrance, greeting attendees while keeping an eye on final preparations. What had begun as A way to help one boy in a blue t-shirt had evolved into something more significant, an educational initiative that had captured the imagination of students, teachers, and now the wider community. Even local media had arrived to cover the showcase, attracted by the innovative partnership between a prestigious design firm and an elementary school. "This is remarkable," Principal Jenkins said, joining Michael. "I've never seen this level of engagement from both students and families. You've created something special here." Michael smiled, watching the excited children leading parents to their displayed work. "The students did the real creating. We just provided the framework and materials." Across the room, Tyler stood beside his display board, explaining his adaptive medical clothing concept to a woman in a business suit. Michael recognized her as the representative from Children's Memorial Hospital, who had expressed interest in the design. Tyler's prototype, professionally produced by Michael's team, hung on a mannequin beside him, the practical elegance of its design apparent even from a distance. Michael's attention shifted to the entrance, where Sarah Morgan had just arrived. Her appearance revealed the ongoing toll of her treatments. The careful application of makeup couldn't quite disguise her pallor, and she moved with deliberate care, but her eyes shone with anticipation. She wore a simple dress Michael recognized from his company's recent collection, part of a package that had been awarded to families of students with exceptional program participation. Tyler spotted his mother and waved enthusiastically, beckoning her to join him. As Sarah approached, the hospital representative extended her hand in greeting. "Ms. Morgan, I was just telling Tyler how impressed we are with his concept," the woman said. "I'm Jessica Winters, Director of Patient Experience at Children's Memorial. We believe his design could significantly improve comfort for our patients receiving long-term treatment." Sarah looked momentarily overwhelmed by this professional recognition of her son's work. "That's wonderful," she managed, placing a supportive hand on Tyler's shoulder. "We'd like to develop the concept further," Jessica continued, "with proper credit to Tyler, of course, and potentially a small licensing fee to recognize his intellectual contribution." "Licensing fee?" Sarah repeated, clearly unfamiliar with the terminology. "Payment for using his design concept," Jessica clarified. "Nothing substantial for our initial prototype phase, but if we move to wider production, it could become more significant." Michael had arranged this opportunity through his industry contacts, but the hospital's genuine enthusiasm for Tyler's design had exceeded even his expectations. What had begun as a classroom project might actually provide tangible financial support for the Morgan family while establishing Tyler's early credentials in the design world. As Jessica excused herself to examine other student work, Sarah turned to Michael, who had joined them at Tyler's display. "Did you arrange this?" she asked quietly. Michael shook his head. "I made the introduction, but their interest is entirely genuine. Tyler's design addresses real needs that current medical garments overlook." Sarah studied her son, who was now eagerly explaining his design details to a classmate's parents. "He's different these past few weeks," she observed. "More confident, happier." "Purpose does that," Michael replied. "Finding something you're good at that also helps others. It's transformative at any age." Their conversation was interrupted by Ms. Patterson announcing the start of the fashion show portion of the event. Students hurried to take their positions, excitement building as music began playing through the room's speakers. One by one, children took their turns walking the small runway, proudly modeling garments they had helped design. Some wore professional interpretations of their concepts, while others showcased the study garments from their design kits, customized with their own creative modifications. The audience applauded each presentation, parents capturing photos and videos of their children's moments in the spotlight. When Tyler's turn came, he walked with surprising poise, wearing a child-sized version of his medical adaptive shirt designed to look like regular clothing while accommodating treatment needs. The audience's applause was particularly enthusiastic, with several medical professionals in attendance nodding in appreciation of the practical innovation. From her seat in the front row, Sarah watched her son with unmistakable pride. Gone was the self-conscious boy in the faded blue t-shirt, replaced by a confident child, proudly presenting his creative solution to a problem he understood too well. After the fashion show concluded, attendees mingled while enjoying refreshments. Several parents approached Michael to express their appreciation for the program, many noting positive changes in their children's confidence and creativity. "Mr. Chen?" a small voice interrupted. Michael turned to find Jason Cooper, the boy who had once commented on Tyler's repeated outfit. "Yes, Jason?" "I was wondering." The boy hesitated, then continued in a rush. "Could we do this program again next year? My aunt says my hospital gown design would really help people like her." Michael smiled, realizing that Tyler's project had inspired others to consider design as a solution to real problems. "We're definitely planning to continue the program," he assured Jason. "Your hospital gown concept is very thoughtful." As the event began winding down, Diane Rivera joined Michael at the refreshment table. "I wanted you to know," she said quietly, "Sarah Morgan has enrolled in our family support program. She's accepting assistance with utility bills and has applied for the subsidized medication program." Michael nodded, understanding the significance of this development. "How is her health?" he asked. "Challenging," Diane admitted. "Her treatments have been intensified, which means even fewer work hours, but she's allowing help now, which makes a tremendous difference." Across the room, Tyler was carefully packing up his display materials under Sarah's watchful eye. Michael noticed the easy conversation between them, the absence of the tension that financial strain and unaddressed needs could create between parent and child. Principal Jenkins approached the microphone for closing remarks, thanking everyone involved in the program's success. "What began as a creative educational initiative has become something truly special," she said. "Not only have our students learned valuable design skills, but they've discovered how creativity can solve real problems and improve lives." As attendees began departing, Tyler made his way to Michael, a small gift bag clutched in his hands. "I made something for you," he said, extending the bag. Inside, Michael found a carefully hand-sewn bookmark made from fabric scraps with "Thank you" embroidered in uneven but earnest stitches. "My mom helped with the sewing machine part," Tyler explained. "But I did the design and the straight stitches." Michael knelt to Tyler's level. "This is beautifully made," he said sincerely. "I'll use it every day." "Mr. Michael," Tyler said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "I know what you did with the program and the clothes and everything." Before Michael could respond, the boy threw his arms around him in a quick, fierce hug. "Thank you for not making it feel like charity." As Tyler ran back to his mother, Michael remained kneeling for a moment, the bookmark held carefully in his hands. In that simple expression of gratitude was everything he had hoped to accomplish. Help provided with dignity preserved, needs met without pride wounded, opportunity created from necessity. 6 months had passed since the young designer's showcase. Spring sunshine streamed through the windows of Michael's design studio, where Tyler sat at a professional drafting table, colored pencils spread before him as he worked on his latest concept. He wore a bright yellow t-shirt with a subtle geometric pattern, one of many that now filled his dresser drawers at home. "What do you think?" Tyler asked, sliding his sketch toward Michael. "I added the adjustable tabs like you suggested." Michael examined the drawing, a clever backpack design with special compartments for medical supplies, clearly inspired by Tyler's ongoing experiences with his mother's treatment. In the months since the program at Elmwood Elementary, Tyler had continued to develop his design skills through weekly mentoring sessions with Michael. "This is excellent work," Michael said sincerely. "You've really thought through the functionality while keeping the appearance age-appropriate. No one would know it's a medical backpack unless they needed to use those features." Tyler beamed at the praise, adding final touches to his drawing with the confidence of a child who had discovered his passion. Across the studio, Sarah Morgan conversed with Michael's production manager, her hands gesturing animatedly as they discussed fabric options for the newest additions to the adaptive clothing line. Her appearance had changed dramatically since the showcase. Her hair was growing back in soft curls after her final round of chemotherapy, and healthy color had returned to her cheeks. Most striking was her posture, the defensive hunch of someone bracing against life's challenges had been replaced by the straight-backed confidence of a woman who had faced her worst fears and emerged stronger. 3 months ago, Sarah had received the news they'd been hoping for. Her cancer was in remission. The doctors remained cautiously optimistic, scheduling regular follow-ups, but encouraging her to begin rebuilding her life beyond treatment. That rebuilding had taken an unexpected form. What began as Sarah's occasional assistance with Tyler's design projects had evolved into part-time employment with Chen Design Group, managing production for their new adaptive clothing division. Her first-hand experience with medical treatments provided invaluable insights for product development, while her meticulous attention to detail made her a natural fit for production oversight. "How's the hospital order coming along?" Michael asked, as Sarah joined them at the drafting table. "On schedule," she replied. "The pediatric sets will be ready for delivery next week. The prototype testing went extremely well. The nurses are particularly impressed with the port access features." Tyler looked up from his drawing. "Are they using the colorful fabric patterns I picked?" Sarah nodded. "The child psychologist confirmed your theory. The brighter patterns were significantly preferred by younger patients. They're calling them the Tyler patterns in the production notes." Pride flashed across Tyler's face before he returned to his work with renewed focus. The shy boy in the threadbare blue t-shirt had transformed into a confident, purposeful child whose ideas were valued and implemented by adults. That original blue t-shirt now hung framed on the wall of Michael's office, a reminder of how seemingly small acts of kindness could catalyze profound change. Tyler had presented it to him during their first official mentoring session, carefully mounted and framed with help from Mrs. Patterson. "I don't need it anymore," Tyler had explained, "but I don't want to forget it either." Michael understood perfectly. The shirt represented both struggle and resilience, a visual reminder of challenges overcome and lessons learned that shaped who Tyler was becoming. As Sarah returned to her workstation, Michael reflected on the chain of events that had brought them to this point. What began as his personal effort to help one child had evolved into something much larger. The Young Designers program had become a permanent fixture at Elmwood Elementary, expanding to 3 additional schools in the district with corporate sponsorship covering all costs. More importantly, the program had created a model for assistance that preserved dignity, meeting practical needs through educational opportunity rather than obvious charity. "Mom," Tyler called across the studio, "can Jason come over tomorrow to work on our joint project? We need to finish the prototype before the hospital committee meeting." Sarah checked her calendar before nodding agreement. "Just be home by 6. Grandma's bringing dinner, remember?" Another change. Sarah had reconnected with her mother after years of strained relations. The illness that had initially driven Sarah to greater isolation had ultimately pushed her to rebuild family connections, accepting her mother's support during treatment and recovery. At 3 o'clock, Tyler packed up his supplies as Sarah gathered her belongings. They had established a new routine. Tyler attended the after-school program on days Sarah worked late, but today they would head home together, stopping at the grocery store on their way to their new apartment. It wasn't large or luxurious, but it had 2 proper bedrooms and a small balcony where Sarah had started a container garden during her recovery. "See you Thursday for our mentoring session," Michael confirmed as they prepared to leave. Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "I'll have the backpack prototype ready for review." After they departed, Michael remained at the drafting table, reviewing fabric samples for the upcoming children's collection. His design focus had shifted significantly over the past months, with adaptive and accessible clothing becoming a core part of his company's mission rather than just a side project. The change had been good for business, but more importantly, it had infused his work with renewed purpose. His phone buzzed with a message from Diane Rivera at Elmwood Elementary. "Thought you'd want to see this," she'd written, attaching a photo of the school's bulletin board. Featured prominently was a news article about Children's Memorial Hospital adopting patient-designed medical wear, with a photo of Tyler standing proudly beside a display of his clothing designs. Another message followed. "Registration for next year's program is already at capacity. Your designer materials kits approach has been adopted by 3 other community programs. Thought you'd want to know the ripple effects." Michael smiled as he typed his response. The blue t-shirt had started a chain reaction that extended far beyond one child's wardrobe, a reminder that addressing immediate needs with dignity often led to opportunities for longer-term transformation. Later that evening, as Michael closed his studio, he paused before the framed blue t-shirt. Faded and small, it nevertheless represented something powerful: the recognition that everyone deserves both practical support and personal dignity. Sometimes those came wrapped together in unexpected packages: design kits, educational programs, mentoring relationships that acknowledged both needs and capabilities. As he turned out the lights, Michael thought about Tyler's latest design concepts. The boy who had once been defined by what he lacked was now being recognized for what he could create. His mother, once isolated by pride and circumstance, had found community and purpose through talents she hadn't known she possessed. Was a transformation more profound and lasting than new clothes alone could have provided? A reminder that while meeting immediate needs mattered deeply, the most significant change often came from opportunities that allowed people to discover and develop their own potential. Outside, spring rain began falling gently, nourishing new growth after the long winter. A fitting metaphor, Michael thought, for the journey they had all taken together.